know, are leaving stations in Ukraine every single hour, with people crammed into the packed carriages. Look at this. This black and white photograph made headlines. It's taken this week, but it appears to look like a scene from World War II, doesn't it? You just put it in black and white and you go back 70, 80 years. In fact, it was captured at Kharkiv station just last week.
It's absolutely remarkable. Look at the comparison. Hard to believe there are 82 years between these chilling images. Well, Rob Rinder has been motivated to go out there. Normally we'd see you here in this studio, Rob, but you've gone to the Polish border and you're meeting people there who are making the desperate journey out of Ukraine. You've done that because you're instinctively somebody who wants to help, but also because you have family history, don't you, Rob? Which means that you want to do what you can. Talk us through what the situation is like there and why you are there.
Right, and, of course, because we want to tell the world and speak the British people up, but people, just like the past, should know what happened in the past, or we're doomed to repeat it. Well, I can tell GMB viewers and you that it is repeating itself. It's hard to believe, Susanna and Richard, that this is 2022. The trains arrive infrequently. When they do, it is women, it is children, it is babies in mothers' arms. They arrive in wagons cheek to jowl, a sea of humanity with just very often one suitcase and in some cases just the clothes off their back. It is, I have to tell you, an experience that I didn't anticipate in the modern world. It looks, for all intents and purposes, like we're in a first world station. Once those trains arrive, in the rare moments they do, just 2 hours. It's a few weeks ago, a calm, modern journey, much like going from London to Paris. It is a scene not just of devastation, but scenes exactly as you describe and are so viscerally descripted and shown in those pictures, a scene that only our parents and our grandparents really lived through.
Well, Rob, draw us your personal parallel then. What you are witnessing with your own eyes is an experience that your own family went through many, many years ago. Just tell us about it.
And not just mine. You know, my grandfather, for him, it was too late. He arrived in the UK in 1945 into Windermere, where the local community gifted him this love of Great Britain. Before that, in 1938, there were Jews who, too few of them, were given succour and sanctuary in the UK on the Kindertransport. But, of course, many children were allowed to escape from the Blitz. Both of my grandparents received that generosity. Each of us have a story, be it internal or external, of refugees and of saving the lives of women and children. And I have to be as clear as I possibly can. It's harder to think of a more articulate expression of what a refugee is than the tens of thousands crammed into trains arriving at this station. But the experiences of when they arrived is something that, of course, we need to focus on and talk about. Of course, this is a personal motivation. Of course, I have my history, but it's not my history. It's British history, the history of generosity, a history of a nation that's truly great because in the past, it has always sought to give refuge to those who need it most. And there are so many charity workers here. I've seen people who are police officers, ambulance drivers, the best of British people, who are taking unpaid leave to go and help people, and they're standing in the reception centre in order to assist them. The difference, however, is that when people come off those trains, and I need to emphasise, the people coming off those trains are women and children, because their men, by Ukrainian law, cannot leave the country. They want to get back to their brothers, to, in many cases, their sons. But as they head to that reception centre, there are national desks with flags. We counted 7, France, Italy, Germany, even people from Japan ready, willing and able to point people in the right direction in order to get refuge. We could not find a British desk, despite the fact, exactly as you've described, speaking up the brilliant British public, many of whom are the most challenged, let's call them what they are, our working class communities, who I hear from every day, who are first to answer the call to hospitality to give whatever they can. They can't deliver on that promise unless the red tape can be cut. There is no desk, there is no help. The nearest office is about 2 hours away, or you can go to Krakow and fill in a form. That is frankly impossible. And when I think back to the Second World War, when I think back to the agencies that assisted so many, the reason they were able to do that was because red tape was cut.
Yeah.
We cannot be a nation that delivers on its promises and be truly great unless we can do that. All it needs is administrative help on the ground. There's plenty of decency. There's overwhelming light in the darkness. There's so much charity, but that's not enough.
Rob,
the red tape needs to be cut in order for those thousands of people to be able to give them their homes.
We have the Europe Minister on right now, so let's ask him about that. James Cleverly, I expect you were listening to Rob there on the Polish border. No British desk at that station. The nearest office 2 hours away, or you can go to Krakow and fill in a form. There's too much red tape. Why aren't we cutting it?
Well, we have, at every stage, tried to make this as quick and as easy as possible. We have opened a scheme whereby British people can host refugees in their own homes, and we have waived the normal immigration system whereby people can come to the UK. So we're making it quicker, we're making it easier, and obviously there are people on the Polish border with Ukraine, but we have a system whereby people can do things online, come to the UK, and then fill out the rest of the administration once they're here in a place of safety.
James, I'm sorry to pick you up on it, but it would not be true to say, would it, that at every stage we have made this as quick and easy as possible? We've had pretty obstructive visa requirements for these people, and there's been enormous criticism of the Home Office. In fact, it wasn't even the Home Secretary who announced the refugees' housing policy yesterday. It hasn't been as quick as easy. Our European neighbours have basically cut the red tape altogether.
Well, obviously, the EU countries bordering Ukraine have had a massive influx of people crossing the border. It's absolutely right that they facilitated the movement of people out of Ukraine into the countries bordering Ukraine. There are now people who are moving across Europe because they have friends, they have families, or they have connections here in the UK. We want to make sure that we're able to host them, to support them, to provide them with what they need in terms of accommodation, if they need emotional support because of the trauma that they've been through. We want to know who they are, where they're going to be, and how we can support them. The scheme that we put forward is designed to do that and make sure that they can have that support here in the UK.
Mr. Cleverly, I'm just getting a note here. You gave an interview to Times Radio earlier today. You, of course, were the Middle East minister until about 5 minutes ago. And you were asked if Saudi Arabia has condemned the invasion of Ukraine. And obviously we're talking to the Saudis because we need their oil. And you said you didn't know the details of that. Surely you must know.
Well, we know that they voted in the same way as us at the United Nations General Assembly. I've been very much concentrating, obviously, on the situation in Ukraine and working with our neighbours and friends in Europe to support that. So I have to say I've been quite focused on that role, so I've not kept track of which countries have made what statements. But as I say, they voted the right way with us at the UN General Assembly, and I know the Prime Minister will be speaking to them and other countries about trying to find ways of replacing the Russian oil and gas, which some countries in Europe are heavily dependent on.
That's our problem, isn't it? We got into bed with the Russians to get their gas and their oil, and now we're scrambling out of their bed. And now we're
something the Prime Minister admits was a mistake.
Which he's admitted was a huge mistake. And now we're scrambling to get into bed with the Saudis, who run an extraordinarily repressive regime. So we're just basically switching evil partners, aren't we?
Look, I don't think it is right to compare anyone in the world to what Russia is currently doing in Ukraine. We raised the death penalty with the Saudis when we speak to them. I did that when I was minister for that region. The simple truth is the UK has largely become independent of Russian oil and gas. Other countries in Europe are not in that position. We need to support them in doing the right thing, which they are doing, which is applying sanctions and pressure on Putin to choke off funding for this invasion of Ukraine. And that's what the Prime Minister is doing, looking to support our friends across Europe who are more reliant on Russian oil and gas than we are at the moment, so that we can continue to apply that pressure and bring this conflict to an end as quickly as possible.
Are you wearing your artillery tie this morning?
This is Royal Artillery tie, yes.
OK, well, in that case, as a military man, what do you say to these persistent reports now that there are a lot of former British servicemen, some of them ex-special services, who are now actually fighting in what amounts to the front line in Ukraine?
Well, look, I can completely understand the desire of people to support the Ukrainians in their defence. I mean, they have shown themselves to be hugely, hugely deserving of our admiration. I would say that our advice remains not to travel to Ukraine. There are other ways that people can support, whether it's through hosting refugees, donating to a recognised charity. We don't want British people to put themselves in harm's way, which is why our advice remains not to travel to Ukraine. As I say, understand people's desire to help, but there are better ways of doing it.
All right, James Cleverly, thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr.
indeed.
Cleverly.
Just remember that it was the Foreign Secretary whose message was she wouldn't stand in the way of anyone who's going.
Go.
Meanwhile, James Cleverly there defending our system, Rob, which actually is making it harder for people to come from Ukraine.
It absolutely is. I heard what he had to say. James Cleverly is a man with 2 kids, and, you know, one has to ask him if the tables were turned and he were asked to fight and his wife was asked to leave, arrive at a station with nothing and be told that they had to fill in a form, go 2 hours and get online and jump through a 50-page form that both my interpreter and I, she speaks Ukrainian and Polish and I speak enough Russian, couldn't do. So, you know, this is not difficult. We don't even need to say that the government are getting it wrong or doing the wrong thing. The British people are speaking up. All they want is to deliver, and I'm going to repeat this because it bears repetition, to deliver on the promises that they've made. It's now close to 50,000 people that have stood up and offered their homes. They just want to get them here. It doesn't take much. It takes people on the ground to help with the paperwork. How hard can that be, James Cleverly?
All right, Rob. One of the reasons that you're there, one of the reasons you went out there was because the family of your former Strictly partner, Oksana Petero, they've also managed to flee Ukraine. You were going to give them a hand, but they actually managed to get out. Yeah. They've come across the border now. They're in Poland, and Oksana joins us from her home in Florida. Oksana, have you managed to speak to them yet?
Hi. I spoke to my family. They are now safe in southwest little village in Poland, and Rob is working on getting them the medication that they need, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
They're quite elderly, aren't they? How old are they?
The youngest is 75 and the oldest is 90.
And that was why originally they'd made the decision not to try and get out. They thought that they could stay. What persuaded them to change their minds and make this very perilous and very difficult journey into Poland? What changed their minds?
Yeah, I think that's the story for most of elderly people. You know, they don't know life outside their homes or their country, and the idea to leave their country, it's just not something they were willing to consider. And you know, my grandma Lida, she had her cat, and you know, she had a house, and she just said, doesn't matter what happens, I'm not leaving. And it wasn't until neighbor's house was bombed and the neighbor's roof ended up laying in our backyard, and I think that was enough for her to decide that she needs to go.
That sounds like a real near miss if your neighbour's roof's in your backyard, in your back garden.
Oh, Oksana, we send you our very, very best, and it must be desperate for you. You're out there in Florida, your family, caught up in what's happening. Our very best wishes to them. And Rob, thank you so much for joining us. It's important work you're doing.
And, of course, you're doing your radio show out there as well. We know that. Thank you, Rob.
I'm here for Talk Radio, but I want to give my love to Oksana as well.
OK, it's duly been sent across the Atlantic. Thanks very much indeed.